All right, in this video, we're going to begin to talk about Buddhism and the non-self or no-self doctrine that it contains. So first of all, a bit about Buddhism. First of all, a bit about my sources. None of this is original to me. I'm drawing heavily on our textbook selection by Christopher Gowans and especially the book by Mark Sideritz, Buddhism as Philosophy, which is an excellent book I recommend to anyone who's interested in these topics. It's very clearly written. So first of all, a bit about Buddhism. The founder of Buddhism is Siddhartha Gautama, and he was born near the present-day border of India and Nepal and lived somewhere during the 6th or 5th centuries BCE. And the core of the Buddhist teachings are the Four Noble Truths. I'm going very quickly here, but briefly, the first truth is that there is suffering in the world. Second, the suffering originates from certain causes, and ignorance is chief among these causes. And that's actually kind of good news because that means the third truth is true, and that is that the cessation of suffering is possible. Since there are causes to this suffering, we can make it stop. And then the fourth truth gives us the way to make suffering stop, and that way is the eightfold path of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right possession, right self-possession, and right concentration. This eightfold path leads to enlightenment. Enlightenment cures the ignorance that causes your suffering. So by following the eightfold path, you achieve nirvana. Now, what is it that we come to know in enlightenment? What you come to know is that there is no self. In other words, you come to really grasp the doctrine of non-self. The idea here is that there is no me for whom events could have any meaning or significance at all. Now, that might sound really depressing, but the idea is that once you see that there's no me, then you stop wanting to have a meaningful life. And therefore, you stop being so disappointed about the fact that you don't have a meaningful life. So to become enlightened is to enter into the state of nirvana. It is a state of liberation from pursuing your own self-interest, from regrets about the past, or worries about the future. All right, now, what we want to look at here is this doctrine of the self. When Buddhists use the term the self, what they mean is the essence of a person, the part of a person whose continued existence is required for that person to continue to exist. In other words, there's a distinction between the self and the person in Buddhism. The person is, as it were, the whole, and the self is the essential part that makes that person one person. The self is what the word I refers to. Now, Buddhists argue that there is no self, and ultimately, therefore, no persons either. Although in conventional language, we can continue to speak of persons as if there were. Now, why would anyone think this? Why would anyone think that there is no self and ultimately no persons? I want to look at a couple of the arguments that Buddhists have put forward. And so to begin with, we're going to start with the argument from impermanence. And in order to understand the argument from impermanence, we need to do a little bit of setup. And so part of the argument for impermanence, from impermanence, will be the exhaustiveness claim. According to the exhaustiveness claim, persons, such as they are composed only of 5 skandhas. Now, skandhas are bundles. So there's 2 kinds of skandhas, 2 kinds of bundles of properties, as it were. The first kind of skandha is a rupa skandha. An arupa skandha includes anything that's bodily, anything corporeal or physical. The other 4 skandhas are called nama skandhas, and they more or less refer to mental skandhas, mental qualities. So there's the skandha of feeling. And that includes sensations of pleasure, pain, and indifference. Perception, mental states whereby you grasp the sensible characteristic of some sensible object. You see a patch of blue color. You hear the sound of thunder. The volition skanda. And that includes the mental forces that are responsible for bodily and mental activity. For example, hunger and attentiveness. And then finally, consciousness, the awareness of physical and mental states. So what they want to say is that persons are composed only of these 5 skandhas. All right, and there's nothing beyond that they could be composed of. Now this lays the groundwork for the argument that follows. And this is the argument from Impermanence. According to this argument, premise 1, if there is a self, then one of its 5 skandhas is permanent. Now, why would they think that? Well, the self is what makes the person permanent. And the person consists only of skandhas. So if there is a permanent self, it's got to be one of those 5 skandhas that we just listed in the last slide. But the argument continues, it is false that one of the 5 skandhas is permanent. None of those 5 skandhas is permanent. Let's go back to that slide for just a second. Everything about you that's physical changes. All your cells change out. All your feelings change. Your perceptions change. Your volitions change. Your consciousness changes. All of these skandhas that could possibly go into composing a person change all the time. None of them is permanent. And what follows, therefore, is that there is no self. There's no permanent component of a person that holds it together. Now, you might wonder, when we say permanent, how long does that have to last? Well, if you believe in reincarnation, as Buddhists do, then that means all past and future lives. But if you leave reincarnation out of the picture, and it's got to at least mean for the entirety of a person's lifetime. So the point is that none of those skandhas last that long. Now, you might raise an objection to that second premise. What was that second premise? It said that none of the skandhas is permanent. You might say, well, wait a second. The body, the rupa skandha, that lasts for an entire lifetime, doesn't it? I mean, my body is with me until I die. But the reply here is that no body part is essential to a person. And that, remember, the self is supposed to be essential to the person. So think about any of your body parts. You can get haircuts. Your hair's not essential, or amputations, or even organ replacements. So no body part is a self, you might think. Well, again, you might object that, wait a minute, there is an essential part, my brain. Once my brain goes down, that's essential to my personhood. It's not replaceable. But the reply here again is that, look, you could download the contents of your brain to another brain and replace it like a hard drive. So therefore, your brain's not essential either. And then furthermore, through metabolism and other life processes, all the atoms in your body change every 7 years. That includes your brain. So every cell in your brain is replaced. Your brain, therefore, is replaced. No body part is essential. No body part is the self. Well, you might raise another objection to that, to P2, that says that no skandha is permanent. You might say, look, some of my nama skandha are permanent. In particular, some of my volitions endure for my entire lifetime. For example, self-preservation. I've got this instinctual desire to escape life-threatening situations, and that is always with me to the end of my life. So therefore, that skandha is a self, or it could be myself. But the reply here is that actually you don't have that desire continuously, but you only have that desire when you're thinking about a threat. You're not constantly thinking about and desiring to escape life-threatening situations. Only when, say, a bus is bearing down on you and you're standing in the street, situations like that. So it's not permanent. Now, again, the objector could make another move here and say, look, hold on a second. A volition, like a, a choice, a desire like that, it isn't just the occurrence of a certain kind of mental event that happens for a period of time and stops. It's more than that. It's an underlying mental disposition or power that produces that kind of mental event when necessary. In other words, the objector here could say, it could raise a dispositional theory of volition and say the disposition to preserve my own life persists throughout my whole life, even though the conscious desire to, say, get out of the way of a bus only occurs periodically. But the mental disposition itself lasts forever. What's a Buddhist going to reply to that? Well, the reply here is that actually there's no such thing as dispositions. There are no such like underlying dispositions. All the namaskandhas, all the mental bundles of properties are dependently originated. What does that mean? Well, it means that they are caused by preceding mental events, not by underlying dispositions. In other words, my desire to get out of the way of a bus is not produced by some underlying disposition to preserve my own life. No, it's produced by my immediately preceding desires and beliefs. For example, my desire to make it to the coffee shop alive. My desire to make it to the coffee shop and my belief that the bus will stop me from making it there is what produces my desire to preserve my own life. So there isn't this like underlying, invisible, nebulous, unconscious disposition. Rather, there's just a series of beliefs and desires, a series of other mental events that all produce one after the other. This is called the dependent origination theory. So the objection posits dispositions, the reply posits, no, there are no dispositions. There's only a dependent origination of mental states. Now I want to stop there. What you'll see is that Buddhism has started with a desire for kind of salvation from the suffering in this world. And it's moved from there to the special knowledge, which is supposed to save us, the grasp, the enlightened person's grasp that there is no self. And that argument for the non-existence of the self has taken us into some complex philosophy of mind. And specifically, we've had to examine these two theories of the mental, the dispositional theory and the dependent origination theory. So these are worth considering. What makes up the mind, which skandhas, and are there such things as dispositions? All of this ties back into the debate about how to achieve nirvana. We'll look at another argument in our next video.